Good evening. I'd like to welcome all of you to the Political Awareness Committee program this evening, and I'll tell you a little bit about our guest, Paula Bowman. Paula Bowman has served as co-president of the League of Women Voters of Michigan for the past 3 years. She has been a member of the League in Northwest Wayne County for nearly 40 years and served as president for 14 years there. Paula also serves on the board of directors of Promote the Vote, the nonprofit organization that, like the League, works to advance voting rights in Michigan. Paula is a graduate of Eastern Michigan University with a degree in French language and literature, which she did not use one bit during her working career or her work with nonprofits. Paula lives in Plymouth with her husband Gordon, and her mother Marguerite Kowaleski is a resident here at Fox Run Community. Thank you. Paula?
Thanks, Roberta. So, hi everyone, good evening. Thanks for welcoming the League of Women Voters to come here and help you understand a little bit more about the new voting rights. Today's town hall will focus on those new voting rights under Proposal 2 of 2022. We're going to save time for questions at the end. And Roberta, I understand you will be picking up index cards throughout the program so that they can be posed at the end. Okay. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization whose mission includes public education of election issues. We never support or oppose any candidate or political party. Proposal 2 of 2022, also known as Prop 2, I'm going to be saying Prop 2 a lot this evening, was a proposal on the November 2022 general election ballot to amend the Michigan State Constitution to make our elections even more accessible and secure. Prop 2 passed with over 60% of the vote. Thanks to the passage of Prop 2, we now have many new and improved voting rights. These include the right to vote early in every statewide and federal election, the right to sign up to become a permanent mail voter, the right to prepaid return postage on absentee ballots and the applications that you send in to get an absentee ballot, and the right to an enhanced tracking system for absentee ballots and applications, just to name a few. We're going to be talking about all of these later in the evening. The goal of tonight's town hall is to provide you with information you need to understand your new rights, how you can exercise them, and what, if anything, you can do to make sure that your new rights are implemented successfully. Thanks to Prop 2, the Michigan Constitution now guarantees every voter the fundamental right to vote. Probably didn't know that that was not in the Constitution until this proposal, did you? Well, it's true that it was not. The fundamental right to vote includes, but is not limited to, the right, once registered, to vote a secret ballot in all elections. This right also prohibits any person or legal entity, for example, a business or a state agency, from interfering with or unreasonably burdening the fundamental right to vote, whether by act of law, harassment, threats, or intimidation. Any Michigander can bring a lawsuit to enforce this right if it is violated. The next right we will discuss involves the certification of election results. The Board of State Canvassers is responsible for certifying that the results of every statewide and federal elections are accurate. Prop 2 clarifies that the duty of the county and state canvassers is ministerial, clerical, and non-discretionary. In other words, you count the votes, whoever won, won. They must certify the election results based solely on the votes cast by eligible voters in that election. The certified results are final, subject only to a recount or court order. Thanks to the passage of Prop 2, Michiganders now have the right to engage in true early voting. That is, to cast their ballot in person before the election, just like they would on Election Day. Every city and township must offer early voting in every statewide and federal election. So this coming November election is not a statewide election. We're going to talk about how early voting is still available to you, but it's not required. Although cities and townships are not required to offer early voting in non-statewide and non-federal elections, they may choose to do so. Early voting sites must be open for 9 consecutive days, beginning on the second Saturday before the election and ending on the Sunday before the election. During this 9-day period, early voting sites must be open for 8 hours a day. The 8 hours can be offered at any time of the day, consecutively or non-consecutively. Can communities offer early voting when it's not required by the Constitution? Yes, cities and townships have the flexibility to offer early voting in non-statewide and non-federal elections for more than 9 days and for more than 8 hours a day during the constitutionally required 9-day period. The earliest that a city or township can start offering early voting is 29 days before an election day. Early voting will take place at an early voting site called, we use the acronym EVS, early voting site. Early voting sites are subject to most of the same requirements as election day polling places. For example, at polling places, it has to be fully accessible. It must allow members of the public to observe and must maintain all voted ballots in sealed containers at the end of the day. However, they may serve voters from more than one city or township and more voters than an election day polling location. Can communities work together to offer early voting? Absolutely. Cities and townships will have the option to offer early voting either on their own or as a single municipality with other cities and townships within their county or with the county. We all recognize that early voting is a significant undertaking for city and townships. It will require more time, money, and resources. To reduce this burden, we strongly encourage city and townships to work together with other municipalities or with their county to offer early voting. Early voting is a great opportunity for Michiganders to vote at a time that is convenient for their busy schedules. It also allows voters to know right then and there that their vote has been counted. That is, they can put it right in the tabulator, unlike an absentee ballot where you just surrender it into a drop box. To make sure that cities and townships continue to establish and staff convenient early voting sites and that the legislation continues to fund early voting, we need to take advantage of this right. I will tell you that in this upcoming November 7th election, where you here will be electing City of Novi municipal officers, that would normally not be required to be an early voting election, but Novi, along with the Township of Novi and the City of Northville and a number of other communities in Oakland County, have agreed to be pilot programs for early voting. So, in Novi, for this November election, if you want a new experience, you can go to the early voting site, which is at the Novi Civic Center on 10 Mile Road. It starts on October 28th and goes through November 5th, 8:30 to 4:30. You can just walk in, get a ballot, and put it through the tabulator, just as you would be doing on an election day. It's a great way for the state to see how the process works, to see what went right, what went wrong. So the state is very glad that a lot of communities like Novi is actually testing this program. And I use that word testing a little bit loosely, but it's not really a test for you. It is a bona fide way to vote and submit your ballot. And as I said, if you want a new experience, go check it out. Another way that Prop 2 made voting more convenient for Michiganders is by providing the right to sign up to receive an absentee ballot rather than just an application before each election. You know how in the past, even though you've been voting absentee for 20 years, you still had to request it, you writing out an application each time? Well, now you won't have to. Did you already sign up to receive a ballot before every election? No, previously it was the application. They would still need to people would still need to complete and submit the application each time to receive an absentee ballot, but now voters will have the right to submit a single application, which will allow them to get an absentee ballot every election. This is probably a great thing for people like residents of Fox Run who are voting absentee all the time. It may not be such a great thing for, say, a 20-year-old or a student who's moving around all the time, but someone who is in a place where they're going to be for quite a while or even for a number of years, a permanent absentee ballot is a great way to make the system more efficient for you, the voter. For now, to sign up for the permanent mail ballot list, voters can check the box on their regular absentee ballot application stating that they'd like to receive a ballot before every election. We understand that the Bureau of Elections is working on additional ways that voters can sign up for the permanent mail ballot list too. You know that you often get applications from political parties, from candidates, urging you to sign up for an absentee ballot. The state is still not sure whether they will be accepting those applications provided by a political party or a candidate, as opposed to just the official request. So stay tuned for that. If you sign up to join the permanent mail ballot list and then you move within the state of Michigan, you will remain on the list as long as you update your voter registration address. If you move outside of Michigan and surrender your Michigan driver's license, you'll be removed from the list since you will no longer be eligible to vote here in Michigan. If you will be away from your home during the election season, maybe going to Florida, for example, you're on vacation, or if you're attending school, you can have your ballot sent to a different address. The whole point of this is to be flexible enough to not make voting so difficult that you don't vote. We all want everyone to vote to participate in our democracy. Once you sign up for the permanent absentee mail ballot list, you'll remain on that list unless one of these 5 things occurs. You submit a signed request to your city or township clerk to be removed from the list. You move outside of Michigan or you pass away. You move within Michigan without updating your voter registration list or address. You are no longer eligible to vote, for example, if you are serving a sentence in prison, or you do not vote for 6 consecutive years. Is the list secure, the permanent absentee ballot list? Yes. In order to join the list, clerks must first confirm the voter's identity by comparing the voter's registration on their application to the voter's signature on their voter file. If you regularly vote, be sure to sign up for the permanent mail ballot list the next time you request an absentee ballot. Next up is voter ID. Michigan has had the same voter ID law since 1996. Prop 2 essentially wrote this existing voter ID law into the Constitution. So they didn't change really much of anything. It's just now part of the Constitution. And it ensures that all eligible voters could cast a ballot regardless regardless of whether they had a certain type of photo ID. You do not need a photo ID to vote in Michigan. You will be asked to provide a photo ID when you arrive to vote, either at your clerk's office, by absentee ballot, or at an early voting site, or at your polling place on Election Day. If you have an acceptable photo ID with you, you must show it when asked. But if you don't have an acceptable photo ID or do not have an acceptable photo ID with you at the time you arrive to vote, you can still vote. You would then have to sign an affidavit of voter not in possession of picture ID and vote a regular ballot. But please remember that when you register to vote, you have to show your picture or you have to do it in person. So it's not as if suddenly Michigan is not requiring photo ID. At one point, to register to vote, a picture was required. Acceptable photo IDs include an expired or current Michigan driver's license or state ID. This is the only type of state ID that can be expired. All others must be current. A driver's license or ID from another state, if you just moved here, a U.S. passport or federal government issued ID, a local government issued ID, a military photo, a tribal photo ID, or a student photo ID issued by an educational institution. However, if you try to show a student ID from 40 years ago, it's a problem. So there are many reasons a voter may be without an acceptable photo ID when they go to vote. They can't afford it. They don't have access to transportation to get an ID. They left their ID at home, or they simply lost it. These voters should not be deterred from exercising their right to vote. So we encourage you to remind your friends and family and neighbors that if they don't have a photo ID, but they are registered to vote, they should still be able to vote in Michigan. The passage of Prop 2 made several improvements to the absentee voting experience as well. The first change concerns postage for absentee ballots and applications. It's very straightforward. The state must now provide funding for return postage on all absentee ballot applications and ballots. No more searching for a stamp. You can still put it in the drop box, but the prepaid postage will automatically be on there. Voters now also have the right to be notified by their clerk of any issues with their absentee ballot application or ballot, such as forgetting to sign the outside of their absentee ballot envelope, which is by far the major reason that so many absentee ballots get rejected or not counted. If you are notified of an issue with your ballot or application, you must be given an equitable opportunity to correct it. So if you forget to sign it, this tracking mechanism will notify you in advance so that you can go into the clerk's office, sign it so your vote is counted. A uniform statewide process for notifying voters of these issues will not be in place until the spring of 2024. So it's not going to happen this November election, and probably not for the February 2024 presidential primary. Relatedly, voters now have the right to a new and improved state-funded online ballot tracking system. Thanks to Prop 2, voters will now be able to track their absentee ballots and absentee ballot applications more closely. For example, voters will be able to see details about any issues with their application or ballot and will learn how to and when they must fix them. In addition, voters will have the option to sign up to receive all of this information through text messages or emails. So watch for that information to come out next year. It's not available yet. I should say that some cities and townships do have it available, but it won't be mandated by the state of Michigan until next year. The Bureau of Elections is working on creating this enhanced ballot tracking system, and we anticipate that voters will be able to use it and sign up for notifications later this year or early next year. In the meantime, voters can still track some information about their absentee ballot applications and their ballot online at Michigan Voter Information Center, mi.gov/vote, down there at the bottom. Thanks to Prop 2, voters now have the right at least one secure ballot drop box in their city or township. The law says that if you have over 15,000 registered voters, you have to have more than one. So even if you have 15,002 voters, you have to have 2 drop boxes. A ballot drop box is secure, locked structure that voters may use to return their completed absentee ballot applications and voted absentee ballots. Many communities already have one or more drop boxes, but all communities must ensure that they're complying with the constitutional amendment of having at least one ballot drop box for every 15,000 registered voters. Communities that already have the constitutionally required number of drop boxes are all set, but they could choose to provide more. Clerks must distribute drop boxes equitably throughout the city or township. This means clerks should place drop boxes in areas that are convenient and accessible to voters, including voters with disabilities, such as downtown areas and public spaces. I did speak with the City of Novi clerk, Courtney Hansen. Some of you may know her. She isn't here, is she? She said that she might try to come tonight. Unfortunately, she has said to me that there would not be a drop box for absentee ballots at Fox Run. I know in the past there has been one, I think at the Belmont and then one year at the Ascot, but I think because of these new requirements, it's not possible for them to do that anymore. You cannot use any drop box in the state. You can only use the drop boxes that are located in the city or township where you live. So if you're going to visit your kids in Livonia, you can't put your ballot in there. You have to bring it back and put it in a drop box in the city of Novi. Drop boxes must be accessible 24/7 during the 40 days prior to an election and up till 8 p.m. on election day. Are drop boxes secure? Yes. They must be securely locked, bolted down so they're embedded in the concrete, designed to prevent the removal of absentee ballots and applications, except by authorized election officials. Currently, many, but not all drop boxes are also subject to video surveillance, but starting in January of 2026, all drop boxes will be subject to video surveillance. Be sure to uplift the safety and convenience of drop boxes in your community. Before the passage of Prop 2, absentee ballots from everybody, all voters, even military and overseas voters, had to be in the clerk's office by 8 p.m. on election day. Now, absentee ballots from all military and overseas voters are considered timely if they're postmarked by election day and if they're received at least 6 days right after the election. So this is really a help to people who are overseas and are desperate to get their ballot back, but because of reasons they can't control, haven't been able to do so. Prop 2 also increased the security of our elections by strengthening the audit process. An election audit is a review of documents, ballots, and procedures used before, during, and after an election. Election audits are important because they ensure the accuracy and integrity of our elections by confirming that election officials followed the proper procedures before, during, and after election day. That election equipment functioned properly and accurately counted our ballots, and that the correct winner was certified. Statewide election audits are conducted by the Secretary of State, county clerks, and their staff members. These officials must conduct audits after every statewide election. Are election audits partisan? No, they are not. Thanks to the passage of Prop 2, the Michigan Constitution now states that no officer or member of the governing body of a national, state, or local political party and no political party precinct delegate shall have any role in the direction, supervision, or conduct of an election audit. Are election audits secure? Yes, they are. Public officials must maintain the security and custody of all ballots and election materials during an audit. Audits are also transparent. They must be conducted in public based on predetermined public criteria, and all funding must be publicly disclosed. The League of Women Voters is a large group of volunteers, and we often go and observe public meetings like audits or the Board of Canvassers review of the ballots. So it's an interesting process to watch. Again, if you're looking for a new experience, you might want to investigate that. There's hardly anybody there. It's usually just the league people and the election workers, but it is an interesting process. Another way that Prop 2 improved election administration is by requiring the public disclosure of charitable contributions. County, city, and township clerks can fund elections in their communities through state funding, federal funding, and publicly disclosed charitable contributions. Charitable contributions include non-monetary contributions such as buildings and resources. So when a church or a school donates a building for an election to take place, either for early voting or on election day, that's considered a charitable contribution. It now has to be disclosed in some document that is available to the public. Although clerks have the option to fund elections through publicly disclosed charitable contributions, they're not required to do so. If clerks choose to accept these donations, Prop 2 now requires them to publicly disclose them. Clerks do not have the discretion to accept any charitable contribution, though. They are charitable contribution from an international source. They are prohibited from accepting any donations from foreign funds or sources. That's it. Isn't this easy? I'd be happy to answer your questions. I know this is a lot of material, and as I said, none of it takes place for this November election. You will see it gradually being introduced starting next year. The early voting piece will be a requirement for all elections in Michigan for the presidential primary, which is going to happen at the end of next February. But you guys, because you live in the city of Novi, are lucky enough to be able to vote early, even at this election, because the city of Novi is a pilot for that process.
How many states have a similar level of protection of voter rights?
I'm afraid I don't know that. And you know, the protection of voter rights, that's a really broad topic. There's some protections at the voter registration process, at the election process, at the early voting process, and at the audit process. So if it was something more specific, I'd be happy to investigate and get back to you, but I just don't know that.
There's a question number 2, maybe that will help. Can I get confirmation from the city?
That my ballot was counted
Can you get confirmation from the city that your ballot was counted?
or received.
You can get confirmation from the city that your application for an absentee ballot was received and that your absentee ballot was received. Absentee ballots are still not run through the tabulator until usually election day. They're trying to change that law so that clerks can run them through the day before, but so they won't they'll at least have confirmation to you that your ballot has been received.
I can see people writing a few more questions, so they're coming along. Thank you. Will there be legal challenges for these changes?
Yes, there will be. In fact, there is one right now. There's a number of some legislators that are challenging not just Prop 2 that was passed in 2022, but also the proposal that was passed in 2018, which allowed for straight party ticket voting and no reason absentee ballot. And they're saying that constitutionally only the state or federal government has the option to create spaces and times and dates for elections. But we are told that this is based on the independent state theory, which was struck down in the U.S. Supreme Court just this past summer in the Moore versus Harper decision. So we'll just have to wait and see. That lawsuit was just filed probably about 2 weeks ago. As with any new change, there's always challenges, and this is just another.
Okay. I have not received an absentee ballot application. Where can I go to apply?
If you are able to do it online, you can do it online, but I would also call your city clerk. In fact, I even have her number here. If you have a pencil, I can give it to you. But she will be happy to send you an application. Maybe I don't. It's Courtney Hanson, but I don't have her number here. But if you call the City of Novi city clerk, she will be able to send you an application.
Thank you. Where will the Novi drop box be located?
We don't know. I would expect that the City of Novi will have one at their clerk's office. I am not confident that the City of Novi has more than 15,000 registered voters, so they may only require one.
I know in the last election, there was one outside and another one inside. And if you wanted to be sure, the clerk said, drop it inside.
Drop it inside. You can certainly do that, but those drop boxes are emptied on a regular basis, at least once a day, and I presume in the evening before the staff goes home.
Okay, we have another question. How can we be sure that permanent absentee ballots only go to existing voters?
Well, they are matching. First of all, they are looking at the qualified voter file, which will tell the City of Novi whether you have voted in the last 6 elections or one of the last 6 elections. If you have not voted in that election, they will not send you a ballot. They also review on a daily basis a record from the Secretary of State's office from deaths that have occurred in Michigan to eliminate any people who have passed away. There's a lot of safeguards in place to make sure that those ballots are not going out to anyone who is not eligible to receive it. And I can't give you a list right now, but I know that it is an issue that is top of mind to the clerks because they don't want to be challenged that they're sending out ballots to people who have not requested them.
Thank you. Re-election audits. Were audits requested and aggressively observed by partisan groups, legal under Prop 2? Do you want me to repeat that?
Sure.
Okay. It's about election audits. Were audits Were audits requested aggressively observed by partisan groups, legal under Prop 2? This is if same situation were to occur. I'm not sure.
You know, I think the audit language was written into this proposal to prevent what happened in one of the states out west, and I want to say it was Colorado, but I'm not 100% sure, where after there were a lot of claims of election fraud, the audit was done by a company hired by one of the political parties that had no, I mean, it was so partisan. It was, in fact, they never did find anything, and it was just, it wasted a lot of money. So I think that it was put into our Constitution to protect against that happening. For instance, the Democrats who are in power now cannot hire an audit company to audit the election. It cannot happen that the party in power can supervise that. It can't happen that people who work at election precincts are in charge of the audit. So I work the election on election day. It would be a big conflict of interest if I was auditing the election in the city where I'm working, because I sure don't want to have anyone find any goofs on my watch. But as I said, it's a safeguard to make sure that audits are independently handled.
Thank
Hope
you.
that answers the question.
Okay. If overseas ballots can be received 6 days after the election, will we not know the results until 6 days after the election?
You will know the results because the results come out as unofficial results pretty quickly after all the ballots are counted, all the ballots that are in, but the official results will not come out until the Board of Canvassers has looked at all the ballots, including those from overseas. We used to be able to have cities and townships certify their elections within 2 days after the election. Now we're waiting at least 6 days afterwards for all those military and overseas ballots. And our league in Michigan monitors all the boards of canvassers in all the counties, and I'm one of the people on the phone calling saying, have you certified yet? And every once in a while you have a county, especially when it's small, saying they certified early because they didn't have any, they didn't send any ballots out overseas to a voter or a military person. But if they have a military or overseas ballot that they have not received, they must wait those 6 days. But as I said, that's not really going to hold up anything, because usually those ballots coming in are not, they're such a small number that they're not going to impact the results in terms of who won or didn't.
Okay, I just received the phone number of the city clerk here in Novi.
Great.
If you have a pen or pencil, you might want to use it. It's 248-347-0456. And I think these are listed in the Edge magazine that we get all the time in our mailboxes. They have all the information about the city of Novi in there. Any more questions for Paula?
Well, remember that these voting rights are yours now, but you're not going to see them rolled out till probably next year. You'll be seeing a lot of stuff on TV and social media about early voting, because it will be everybody in Michigan in February, not just some of these Oakland County precincts that are doing pilot programs. So we're very pleased that the city of Novi is one of the ones doing it. And if I lived here, I'd go and vote early. I think it would be interesting to see how that's going to work. So I hope some of you take advantage of that. I also wanted to mention one more thing. Even you do have a November election coming up. If you are looking for information on your candidates, you can go to the league's online voter guide. And as I said, it's nonpartisan. We never support or oppose any candidate. We ask questions of the candidates and put their responses in exactly as they've submitted them to us. We don't correct punctuation or spelling or anything like that. But if you go to vote411.org, type in your address, you can pull up all the races on your ballot. So the city council for Novi, and I think you've got mayor, right, Roberta? So all of those, you could find information about those candidates. Vote411.org. We don't have a paper printed guide this year. It's all online. But next year for the presidential election, we will have a big paper printed guide.
One
Okay.
last thing I'd like to mention is Fox Run has their own precinct in the Derby room across from the elevator. So if you don't want to vote absentee, you can vote on election day right here at Fox Run. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks.